Hello, how are you doing today? It's been a while since my last sitting down in front of the camera talking to your video, so I hope you've been well since last we spoke. I'm back with a Quiet as Mouse book club video today, and it's the old style where I am talking about one singular book, and this book is Tusk Love by Thea Guanzon. This book is a romantasy, and it follows Guinevere, who is a privileged merchant's daughter who has to travel to the man that her parents have arranged for her to marry with her dowry, and Oscar, the half-orc blacksmith's apprentice, who finds himself travelling with her because it turns out that this dowry that she is carrying is in high demand by some mysterious figures, which makes their trip along the Amber Road more perilous. The origin of this book is so much fun. This book comes from a running joke in Critical Role Campaign 2. Critical Role being the show where a bunch of voice actors sit around and play Dungeons and Dragons. In Campaign 2, I believe around 7 years ago, one of the characters, Jester, buys this book, Tusk Love, in a shop. This smutty romance book, and she becomes obsessed with it, and it's mentioned over and over again in the show. Other characters end up reading it too. Parts of it are read aloud, and it's just a running gag throughout the whole of Campaign 2. And Critical Role have committed to the bit most admirably because they have commissioned actual fantasy author Thea Guanzon to write the thing. So, as a Critical Role fan, and as somebody who has got into romantasy this year, this book couldn't have come at a better time for me. I had to get it. But yeah, because of the origins of this book, it's fascinating to me how many sort of boxes it has to tick. Quite a job of work for Thea Guanzon, I imagine. Because obviously it's got to, cater to Critical Role viewers who have expectations of what the book is like. Some Critical Role fans reading it may be well used to reading romance books and romantasy books, and some may not. But also, it's got to work for people who have no clue what Critical Role is. Because, this book isn't being sold on the Critical Role store to Critical Role fans. This is being sold in bookshops next to romantasy books. And there's not like a lot of Critical Role stuff on the cover. Their logo's at the bottom, but it doesn't say like Critical Role tie-in novel or anything. And I got this from Waterstones, and I'm a card holder and I get, the emails and stuff. And I don't think Critical Role was mentioned in those marketing emails. So this is like being sold as a mainstream romantasy book. So that's kind of fun and fascinating to me that you've got to cater to these different groups of people. And also this is an in-world book, right? This book exists in the world of Critical Role. The book that Jester is reading in Critical Role is set in her world. She is not reading a romantasy book, she is just reading a romance book. It would be the equivalent to me reading a book about two people on a journey from Land's End to John O'Groats. But of course we don't live in Exandria, we don't live in the world of Critical Role, so to us reading it, it's a romantasy book, a fantasy book. But because of that, it sort of changes the way that world building and stuff can happen and that things can be described. You can't spend ages talking about what a half-orc or a halfling is or whatever, because the fictional people who read this book know that. You can't spend ages talking about what Exandria is like, as a world, because that would be odd. And I feel like Guanzon has done a good job of dealing with that. I'd be interested to know if, you have no knowledge or experience of Critical Role and you read this book, if you'd feel like something was lacking with the world building. I feel like it helps that the book is very much centred on the romance, and the romance doesn't really require any knowledge of the world. I do think, though, that the book could have benefited from a map at the beginning. A fantasy classic, you need to have a map at the start, and even though in-world, as I'm saying, it's not actually a fantasy book, it's a romance, it's still a road trip book, so I feel like it could have had a map in it. So I feel like that would have been good, and would also have helped with the world building. But apart from the lack of a map, I think the look of the book is perfect. 10 out of 10, could not be bettered. The cover, the front image, the fancy Tusk Love lettering, the colour palette. I've got the Waterstones exclusive edition, so I've got the yellow sprayed edges, which I love. I don't know if other editions have the sprayed edges. The end papers, the purple hardcover that goes so well with the yellow. The best thing, which just elevates the whole thing so much, is the alternative cover. The bonus jacket image that you can flip round, and you've got like Jester's version of the book. Written by Matilda Merceria. It's got Ford and Jester on the cover. Quotes from characters from Critical Role. Love it. So yeah, onto the story and stuff. Should probably talk about that. I really enjoyed reading this book. It's a quick read. It's got 269 pages, my edition. But the font's pretty big. So it's quite a short book if you're used to sort of reading in the romantasy genre. But I feel like It works for the book because the plot is relatively slight. The romance is very much the main thing. As you would expect for a romance or a romantasy book, the romance is pretty important. It has some fun romance and romantasy tropes in it, you know, like grumpy and sunshine, and the like, oops, there's only one bed and there's only one horse thing. It does also kind of acknowledge that in the book a bit, which I thought was fun. On the second occasion, when there's only one bed for them in the inn, you know, Oscar sort of calls it out. And I liked the romance plot. I really warmed to Oscar and Guinevere. They were really good characters and their relationship was good. There were a couple of things that I really loved about them especially. One is that they were self-aware. Guinevere knew that she had like a sheltered upbringing and that her experiences of the world were different to Oscar's. And she was kind of embarrassed or apologetic about that at times in the book. And Oscar would be, you know, aware when he was being grumpy or unfair and things like that. And the other thing that I really loved was that they communicated well with each other pretty much all of the time. They talked about their feelings and they aired their grievances. They didn't spend like 200 pages being in denial about what was going on between them and fighting it and everything. There's a fair amount of sex scenes and, you know, spicy scenes, and Guanzon writes them really well. And Guanzon's writing style in general, I really loved and rated it, and I'm gonna read more of her books now. She's got a very nice light style which is very easy to read, and it has a lot of wit and fun in the way she writes as well, which I really enjoyed. As I touched on earlier, the elements of the plot that aren't the romance are kind of more slight. The road trip element of the book and the whole thing with the dowry and the arranged marriage is very much secondary to the romance between Oscar and Guinevere. I think on the road trip there's like 2 or 3 separate ambushes, so there's not like a ton of variety in the stuff that happens to them on the journey. And the conclusion to the whole plot with the mysterious dowry and the arranged marriage, that all happens like pretty quickly. It did make the book feel a little unbalanced towards the end, you know, because we were sort of leading up to this thing. But even so, I still really enjoyed reading it. I had a great time. I was entertained throughout. I read it very quickly. It is a really good romantasy book. It may come from a joke, but the creation of the book has been taken very seriously. And oddly, but perhaps not oddly, if you're looking to start reading romantasy books and, you know, you don't have any experience of the genre, I feel like this is legitimately a good first romantasy book to read. I think it's a really good example of a romantasy book. So I would recommend Tusk Love by Thea Guanzon. A good book, a really good book, with a very interesting history. I will give Tusk Love by Thea Guanzon 4.2 out of 5. It's not perfect, but it had so much to do, and it's done almost all of it. So that is the end of my review. I would love to know what you think about Tusk Love if you have read it. If you're a fan of Critical Role, or if you know nothing about Critical Role, you know, was your experience the same or different to mine? Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll be back soon with another. It's nice to be back. But until then, take care, and let's move across to the end screen. If you'd like to see my latest video or some more of the Quiet as Mouse book club, then you can do that below me here. And if you'd like to subscribe to my channel or visit my website, then you can do that beside me here. There's also a link to my Patreon page in the description below if you fancy it. Take care, stay safe and well, and I will see you soon.